We're on. Welcome back to the stream. This is Phoenix with another video on Tuesday, September 27th. Hope everybody's having a fabulous evening. I'm just gonna check my stream here, make sure I'm actually coming in. Still doesn't seem to be coming in. Let's see. Settings. Okay, I guess I'm on now. Okay, well, sorry about that. Where were we? Okay, so what I wanted to present today is my second idea. This is about the sale of assets on a network. So you guys are aware that we have like the EOS marketplace, and we have some other systems like Craigslist and Amazon. You know, one of the challenges with those platforms is often they require some level of KYC or some kind of a payments processor, and there isn't necessarily a community-based arbitration layer when things don't go quite right. I actually recently participated in, okay, this is, showing me frozen. I'm gonna have to come back to my stream, guys. Hold on. An update on this concept of a marketplace on EOS. So you guys are familiar with like Craigslist and Amazon, and you know some of the challenges with using those platforms. One of which is the lack of arbitration that is in some ways transparent and more interactive with the users that are involved. This is particularly kind of a problem if you've ever bought things that are originated in one country and shipped to a different country. I had some recent examples of that actually myself, because I was buying some, of all things, stair rails for my place. I actually built a huge stone retaining wall, and so I needed these rails. Home Cheapo didn't have the rails, so I went on Amazon. Amazon happened to have it, but the rails were based out of China, and you know there are missing parts, and so it took a considerable amount of coordination to resolve the issue. It took a lot of time and a lot, therefore, money, and so you know it would be nice to have a little bit more, a platform that allows users, when disputes do happen, to engage with, say, predefined arbiters, right, to resolve those issues. And more importantly, adding collateralization to assets that, you know, users might claim they have as a way to guard against fraud. You know, we see oftentimes in platforms like Craigslist a lot of scams and frauds being made, right? Because there isn't really a need for, you know, Craigslist does not require skin in the game for users. So what I was envisioning with this particular concept is really twofold. One is creating a way for anybody around the globe to, you know, make a claim for a physical asset they have that they want to sell, or perhaps they want to rent, right, to another user. Have very basic description, cost, right? and have some location metrics that can be searchable, right, by categories or types if you're selling or renting a product. And this is all what it is really intended to do is enable reduce the barriers, right, for anybody to sell a good. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. To sell a good. And so when things don't go right, then we have arbitration, right? And through the network permission system, we enable users to resolve their disputes in a timely manner. And we're also able to keep track of reputations on our network, which also helps to gain the confidence, right, of using a platform like this one, which, can't necessarily be said even with Amazon right now, because even a lot of the Amazon reviews I found, right? So there could be a way through auditability and traceability on a blockchain to kind of determine the source and activities of these users and get some sense as to whether or not they're actually users or they're bots, right? And it might be a little bit harder for bots to actually get away with doing a lot of these things, especially if collateral or actual purchases are required for some of these things. So that was kind of the motivation with this project. Now, with that said, what you're looking at here is a very basic dashboard that shows a listing of different products or services. In this case, we're looking at the portal through a filter where we're looking at rentals within a specific date. And you're also able to select a category. So rentals don't necessarily need to just be real estate. It can be really anything you can think of, which is really interesting. But what you would do is you would go here, look at the dashboard, look at the user, the ratings the user has, when it was last updated. You can look at the price in US dollars and the category. And if you're interested in, learning a little bit more about that, you can hit the select button. That's going to open up this kind of portal. And I forgot to mention, on the left side of this is a hamburger logo. And what that is it enables you to log in, using something like Anchor. There's some other menu items there, like creating a listing, viewing your listings. We're going to go through those viewports as we go through this process. So here you can see a viewing of an asset that's being rented. And so each asset will have a name. It has a type, whether it's for rent or for sale. A zip code and country would be provided, as well as a list price in US dollars, as well as in some cases for rentals in particular, some kind of refundable deposit. Because, what happens is in some cases you rent out your goods and, say they get damaged. You want to make sure that the person that's renting it can basically cover the costs of any of that damage. And what the user who's listing this would do is actually place some collateral or some kind of a bond. And the reason why we want to do that is to kind of provide some assurance to consumers who are going to rent or purchase something that the listing is indeed true. Now, if it turns out that in some case that listing is false, a dispute could be filed, and the listing agent or the listing user could lose their collateral. So it's just a way to prevent fraud. Like you see these issues on Craigslist, and you've even sometimes seen them on Amazon. So this is a way to guard against that type of issue. And then you have a setting here that's an auto top-up of a collateral position. And what this is intended to do is, say you have a price of a good of $80, and we're using EOS, as a means of providing that collateral. So for all you guys out there that wonder, well, you know, these apps are great, Phoenix, but how do they benefit the network? Well, if, you know, this type of a application were to be built on EOS, one of the main benefits is it gives instant demand for something like EOS, because you're using EOS as the collateral for all assets that are listed on this network. So if you have a million, you know, average price of them being, let's say, $100, you know, that would be $100 million dollars, right, in EOS that's used to collateralize those assets. And as that scales and the cost and the transactions increase, in this case, it's a rental of a kitchenette like Casita in El Zante. We can see some exclusions and clarifications and coordination for the rental. You also would have a date module here that would allow the users to view which dates might be available to rent, as well as the arbitration selection. So this is where both the listing agent and the customer would come to a consensus as to, you know, who these jurors in the case of a dispute would be. And you could also view their history. So, you know, you can view where they're from and their history, how they've handled other cases. Now, I will say that, you know, part of the fee in this case would be there would be a base fee to use this platform, and that would finance some of the cost, basically the insurance or overhead for covering, you know, juror work when disputes do specify your dispute structure. So in this case, we specified a 3 of 5 consensus agreement with all the jurors. We have 5 jurors, so again, a 3 of 5, majority rules. And on the very bottom, you have a couple different menus that would show depending on who's actually using this viewport. So in the case of someone creating a new record, you know, you'd have the create button and likely the delete button. In the case of an end user that's looking to actually consume the good or rent the good, you'd have, you know, book or check out in that case, as well as dispute for both users. So, you know, what would happen under dispute? So you'd click the dispute button, and really what you get here is a meeting date that had been specified. Once you hit that dispute button, a notification goes out to the users. The users can specify kind of a date all the users to select, and that just reduces the chance that you won't get a match in terms of a dispute date, as well as a Zoom link. And the agent that is, or the user that is acting on the dispute could specify the requested amount of damages, and this would go into more of a jury. So you have a Zoom, you know, present your case. Each side would probably get about 15 minutes, and then at the end of that, there'd be a quorum between the jurors and a potential cooling off period of about a day, where you have a selection of arbitration status. So either approved, pending, or in the case of you being part of the juror, you would see the submit button, and you could actually toggle, you know, approve or rejected for the amount, or an alternative award amount could be issued. So that's kind of the idea here. There is another viewport I wanted to show, which is this more common thumbnail-based viewport, where you have an overlay on a map of different assets that are for rent or for sale, and on the right, a thumbnail with pictures and ratings, and you can select those and kind of drill into them. On the very left here, you have this hamburger patty. Again, that's more of your login, log out, create a record, those kinds of things. So in terms of what would be needed on EOS, you know, to make this happen, you know, we would need a couple different tables for structuring this data. You know, namely a couple sets of asset tables with types and categories and descriptions and location, pricing, dates, IPFS links to the photos and videos, usernames, and availability. And it's worth noting that some of those records or rows, right, like some of these things that make up this table would essentially be like foreign keys that point to a primary key within another table structure. So I wouldn't imagine we'd have like all these tables individually storing like all the specific location like text, because if we wanted to make a searchable set of data sets, we probably want to aggregate those with some primary key. So we maybe want to format this more like a traditional database, although I'd want to solicit some input from more experienced EOS devs on that. We'd have a reviews table using the primary key from the asset list, as well as a link to the user, and linking those as records. We need a collateral contract for assets using an asset table primary key to link the collateral to the asset listing, as well as an arbitration table using the primary key from the asset list to link to the juror list and authorizations and actions to the designated assets. So there's actually a number of other tables and obviously logic that's involved in this, as well as front-end development. But I thought I'd just give you guys a taste of what at least I envision that'd be part of this solution. So I don't want to bore you guys too much concept here. That's what I want to present tonight. I really would appreciate some feedback or some input on this. Part of, I think, at least my own frustration, or I'll just let everybody know, sometimes it just feels like there's the Eden and there's the Pomelo and the fractally stuff, but I kind of view a lot of those things as agents that are motivated because there's pay involved. But I'd like to see the same amount of support for independent members like myself, right? I'm not paid by the ENF or Pomelo or any of these groups or factions or whatever you call it. And so I'm really at a crossroads, guys. I'm going to be honest with you. I really want to see that engagement, because for me, it's like weighing the opportunity cost with doing these videos, with continuing to support EOS, when there really isn't even that engagement with comments and likes. The minimum, you adding a comment to a video and adding some suggestions about an idea I present that could potentially help to grow this network, right? Those are the kinds of things, if you value what someone's doing and they're not being paid for it, at a minimum, what you want to do is support them in any way you can. Share this video. And so, I just want to let you guys know that piece, because I have noticed that, it has been a little bit harder to get that engagement. I didn't receive really any comments on my last video, which, is a little bit disappointing. So it's fine if that's, how you feel like this isn't of value to you. You're entitled to that. But I just see that, there isn't many people that actually do videos on EOS or present ideas or do any of those things. And for those that do, they're usually working for somebody. They're not doing it as an independent creator or someone who just has an idea who's submitting it to the world. So I hope you kind of appreciate the effort and time that's involved.